Well, ladies and gentlemen, once again, wonderful to have your company on this, the last day of March 2022. Would you believe it? It's already March, is already gone. Well, this year is again off to a flying start, and it's just going through so quickly. There's so much that's happening out there. Well, today we have this new segment. We have lots of things to cover. And then, of course, at 9:30 we'll be joining with the Parliament sitting for today. And of course, we know that the Premier might be mentioning about the flood appeal, which was last night at the Speaker's Green, and it was very well attended. And I will let the Premier make the announcement of the amounts that was raised last night, but it was, way above the last time we got together there to raise some funds, and last time it was for the bushfires, and this time it was for the floods. But again, it was good to see that bipartisan support, and also the support of so many community organizations who were present there. Had a chance to have a good chat with many of the ministers and MPs all around the Green, because they all were there to supporting, and many of them who have mentioned that they keep watching our Facebook Live segment, and that they like the segment, and the coverage is pretty good. I thank you so much for that wonderful comment. It really means a lot to us, and of course the Premier is sparing time to be with us, chat with us as well. That is just amazing. I'll bring to you some photos and clips of those as we go along. But right now, the big talk is about that budget and what that one-off payment would mean for all of us.
Okay, I'll see you over that one. Roll up for the big budget giveaway.
It was a budget focused on the cost of living.
Nice to be with you, Mike. Good morning, Koshi.
Budgets are always in the selling.
And the checks and balances are there.
The low and middle income tax offset.
A hard sell if you're a government in electoral trouble on the cusp of a campaign.
We've heard their concerns, we've responded and acted.
Well, this has all the sincerity of a fake tan.
We're going to heckle.
The Labor leader playing spoiler to the Treasurer and Prime Minister's frenetic double act, promoting their multi-billion-dollar cost of living budget.
It's like a shield for families at the moment.
Fuel tax halved for 6 months, saving 22 cents a litre. A $250 payment for 6 million pensioners and concession card holders, and a $420 top-up tax offset for 10 million low and middle income earners.
Cost of living pressures are real, the fuel price increases are real, and the support that we're delivering is real.
There's one-off payments in April. They may as well have stapled cash to their how to votes.
The Treasurer not hiding the naked politics of his fourth budget.
My focus is on winning the election.
Cost of living support.
The government rushed its bundle of cost of living measures through the lower house with Labor support. The opposition suggesting the rest of the budget had a hidden nasty.
This Prime Minister's budget contains $3 billion in secret cuts. What are they?
Scott Morrison asserting Labor had made a rookie error.
It comes out in that column and it goes in another column, genius. That's how budget works, Mr. Speaker. They don't know how to put a budget together, so I'll put my 8 budgets up to your 0 every single time.
Last night's budget was meant to be the coalition's springboard into an election campaign. There's a sense the government had wanted to spend a lot more to win voter favour, but feared that would only fuel inflation and force the Reserve Bank to hike rates earlier. That would have been disastrous for Scott Morrison, whose standing with voters is already a key vulnerability for his party.
In my public life, I have met ruthless people. Morrison tops the list.
New South Wales Liberal Senator Connie Fierravanti-Wells exiting politics with a swipe at the man she believes engineered her pre-selection loss.
An autocrat, a bully who has no moral compass. Morrison is not fit to be Prime Minister.
I understand that Connie is disappointed. I would strongly encourage her to take any matters up with the party organisation. That's the right thing to do.
The PM would rather the caravan roll on. Andrew Probyn, ABC News, Canberra.
And as the Prime Minister mentioned, that if there are concerns, they need to be taken up with the right authorities and moving on. Well, the big farewell, the big for Shane Warne.
On the ground, Shane Warne made his home. Tens of thousands came to honour him. Among them, sports stars, celebrities, politicians and many of the cricket fans who had cheered the leg spinner over a remarkable career.
He meant everything to me when I was a kid, loved watching him.
He's just somebody that anybody can actually relate to.
So a lot of fond memories, even though I'm an Englishman, and broke my heart a few times.
Australia's best cricketer since Bradman had Sir Donald's granddaughter, Greta Bradman, sing the national anthem. Then former teammates and foes led the tributes.
He made slow bowling fashionable again. He made it cool.
It was an absolute privilege to be on a cricket field with you.
A host of international celebrities sent messages of love.
Man, he sucked the marrow out of life. He was a great friend.
You delivered so much to your friends, your family, and to your country.
And some of the world's great entertainers recorded musical tributes.
Don't let the sun go down on me. My love, it was all yellow. I'm loving angels instead.
Shane Warne's family remembered a larrikin who loved to have fun.
He was so thoughtful and one of the happiest people I ever knew.
I'm so proud that you were my dad.
The final tribute came when his children unveiled an MCG stand named in the great cricketer's honour.
You've been such a loving and caring son. Rest in peace, mate. Love you, Mum and Dad.
We will try our best to live in a world without you. I love you always, Dad.
Sea jobs are never easy, but what a great turnout there. 50,000 plus coming in to bid him farewell. Bidding farewell, well, yesterday we bid farewell to Daniel Kumar. You might remember he was the journalist for Australian Brisbane Indian Times, and of course he used to write into the agriculture and the gardening section. And looking at all his achievements, which was unfolded yesterday at a memorial service that was held at Albany Creek to a packed chapel there. Many people came to pay their last tributes to Daniel Kumar. We wish the family all the best, and we hope that, wish that he rest in peace finally. He had been battling with lung disease for the last part of his life, aged 72. So, he said enough is enough. So yesterday we bid him farewell as well. Right now, as we know, we will be going very soon into the Daily India Report. But before that, let's take a look at Lismore, where people have been asked to evacuate once again.
Residents went to bed breathing a sigh of relief. It turned out to be a sleepless night as the heavens opened.
This is an evacuation order. Please leave the CBD now.
Our phone's been going all night. When we thought that we were out of the woods yesterday and the evacuation order was lifted, there were some good signs, but from about 11:30 last night the phone started ringing and no sleep since.
By 9:30 this morning, water was again pouring over the top of the levee. It's left some questioning yesterday's decision to lift the evacuation order.
We were trading for half a day and we made the decision to pull the shop and pack up again. But unfortunately we don't go off the advice nowadays, go off our gut feeling, because the advice is so wrong.
The toing and froing has taken its toll.
Town can't go through what we've been through. We will need a lot more support, emotionally, financially and physically.
Just south of Lismore, a search is underway for a 55-year-old Nowra woman, Anita Brakel, who'd been working as an aged care nurse in Lismore. There's been no sign of her since last night when she became trapped in her car. The SES said lifting the evacuation order was the right decision given the weather conditions at the time.
If we had a crystal ball, then you may make different decisions. The reality is you make your decisions based on the information that you have at the time.
The acting Premier said it was another blow for a community just starting to get back on its feet.
I mean, they must feel as though they've been to hell and back, and to be in this situation once again, dealing with more flooding in those communities. But we also shouldn't be pointing the finger at anyone at this point in time.
There were criticisms that flood gauges and emergency sirens damaged in the last floods hadn't been fixed.
I think we can always look at doing things better, and I want to make that commitment that we always should. But I do make the point that there are no two natural disasters the same.
Because these natural disasters have occurred so close together, many people simply haven't had the time to return to their homes or shops. The upside of that is, on this occasion, there's been no need for a dramatic mass rescue. With April expected to bring more rain, this may not be the last flood Lismore sees this year. Bruce McKenzie, ABC News, Lismore.
And not the last flood that Lismore is seeing this year. Well, it is once again, it becomes very, very hard when the evacuation order is put in and people start evacuating. Then it's lifted. Then in the night you get a message that, hey, you need to vacate again. So of course, as the from the SCA said, that if they had a crystal ball, they would be able to predict. But of course, many times you based your feelings on or your movements on the gut feelings, as that shop owner said, that she was not going by the advice that was provided, but on a gut feeling, she was not going to open the shop for half a day, close it for the full day, move on, try and do the best you can to rescue whatever you can, and of course get out of harm's way and remain safe. I think that's a very, very sound decision that some people took. Well, the good part is that, this time around there have been no deaths and other things, and everyone has been able to evacuate. Of course, there have been lots of heartache, and sleepless nights, but once again, what do you do? These are the things that you need to do, when nature strikes. Well, right now, we'll go to our Daily India report, which will lead into the Parliament sitting.
Welcome to the Daily India report that brings you glimpses of the changing India. In our first story, at the BIMSTEC meet, India's External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar underlines new challenges due to the Ukraine-Russia conflict. India's External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar, while calling for efforts to boost intra-BIMSTEC trade and economic ties, underlined the need for member states to collectively fight terrorism, extremism and transnational crimes. Addressing a meeting of foreign ministers of BIMSTEC in Colombo, Jaishankar said the 7 members of the grouping must create the legal architecture to counter challenges such as terrorism, transnational crime and cyber attacks that can affect economic development. BIMSTEC is a short form of the Bay of Bengal Initiative for Multi-Sectoral Technical and Economic Cooperation. In addition to accelerating efforts to boost intra-BIMSTEC trade, the development of a network of supply and value chains will reduce the region's vulnerability to external shocks and give greater resilience to economies, Jaishankar said. The Master Plan for Transport Connectivity is a framework to better align our national transportation and connectivity networks and must be backed by business collaboration. Development efforts require a peaceful and stable environment, and BIMSTEC members cannot ignore challenges such as terrorism, violent extremism, transnational crime, narco-trafficking and cyber attacks, Jaishankar said. On the margins of the BIMSTEC meeting, Jaishankar held separate meetings with Bangladesh Foreign Minister A.K. Abdul Momen, Bhutan Foreign Minister Tandi Dorji and Nepal's Foreign Minister Narayan Khadka. Jaishankar invited Bangladesh Minister Momen to visit India for a meeting of the Bilateral Joint Consultative Commission. Australia is close to finalizing a free trade deal with India. Australian Trade Minister Dan Tehan said he and his Indian counterpart Piyush Goyal were meeting daily to conclude the deal. Australia is on the brink of finalizing a free trade agreement with India, with an announcement possible in coming days as the government works to strike a deal less than 2 months before an expected May election. Australian Trade Minister Dan Tehan said that he and his Indian counterpart Piyush Goyal were meeting daily and getting very close to reaching a deal. Tehan said he was hopeful that there could be an announcement soon. A free trade agreement between India and Australia has been more than 10 years in the making. with negotiations beginning in 2011 before being suspended 4 years later in 2015. Finally, in 2020, amid warming ties between Delhi and Canberra, Prime Minister Scott Morrison and Narendra Modi agreed to restart negotiations. The two-way trade between India and Australia was worth 24.3 billion Australian dollars in 2020, up from just 13.6 billion dollars in 2007, according to the Australian government. The push for an agreement comes just weeks after the beginning of a national election campaign in Australia, with Morrison's centre-right government pushing a narrative of strong economic management as it struggles to make up ground in opinion polls. Tehan is currently on a visit to the US to meet with Secretary of Commerce Gina Raimondo for the inaugural strategic economic dialogue between the two countries, where they were expected to discuss China's attempts at trade coercion against Australia and the need to strengthen the supply chains for rare earth. Speaking on Russia's invasion of Ukraine, Tehan said he expected Australia to announce further sanctions against Moscow soon. The Indian Navy commissioned its second long-range maritime air squadron, comprising a fleet of Boeing P-8I aircraft, adding muscle to the country's surveillance in the Indian Ocean. Indian Naval Air Squadron 316, the Indian Navy's second P-8I aircraft squadron, was commissioned into service in the Goa state in the presence of Chief of Naval Staff Admiral R. Hari Kumar. Addressing the gathering at INS Hansa, Admiral Kumar said India is the preferred security partner in the Indian Ocean region, which reflects the country's ability to play an effective strategic role in the region and the need to expand its operational reach. The Indian Navy is integral to this commitment, and in pursuance of this objective, the commissioning of INAS 316 marked yet another milestone towards enhancing maritime security and surveillance in the Indian Ocean region. INAS 316 will operate the Boeing P-8I, a multi-role long-range maritime reconnaissance anti-submarine warfare aircraft that can be equipped with a range of air-to-ship missiles and torpedoes. The game-changer aircraft is a potent platform for maritime surveillance and strike, electronic warfare missions, search and rescue, providing targeting data to weapon platforms, providing time-critical surveillance information for IA and IAF, and is also the platform of choice for detecting and neutralizing enemy ships and submarines in Indian Ocean region. The squadron has been specifically commissioned to be the home for the 4 new P-8I aircraft procured under the option clause contract and to deter, detect and destroy any threat in the IOR. These aircraft have been operating from Hansa since December 30th, 2021, and the squadron is integrated with full-spectrum surface and subsurface naval operations. INAS 316 is commissioned by Commander Amit Mohapatra, an accomplished Boeing P-8I pilot with extensive operational experience. He has also flown maritime air platforms such as IL-38 and Dornier 228 and also commanded INS Baratang, as well as served as the executive officer of INS Tarkash. British Foreign Secretary Elizabeth Truss will be in India on March 31st for talks against the backdrop of the war in Ukraine. British Foreign Secretary Elizabeth Truss will hold bilateral consultations with Indian External Affairs Minister Jaishankar on bilateral, regional and global issues of mutual interest. She would also participate in the inaugural edition of the India-UK Strategic Futures Forum, a Track 1.5 dialogue between the two countries hosted by the Indian Council of World Affairs and Policy Exchange, UK. The India-UK relationship was elevated to a comprehensive strategic partnership during the India-UK Virtual Summit held between the two Prime Ministers on 4th May 2021. This would be the second visit of the UK Foreign Secretary to India since the virtual summit and would provide an opportunity to assess the progress on the Roadmap 2030 launched during the virtual summit. The visit will also serve to further deepen our partnership across various sectors such as trade and investment, science, technology and innovation, defense and security, climate cooperation, education and digital communications. The Indian Cricket Board (BCCI) announced the release of the invitation to tender for media rights to the Indian Premier League for the seasons from 2023 to 2027. The Board of Control for Cricket in India issued the tender for the lucrative media rights of IPL, setting the stage for a possible bidding war between Star, Sony, Zee, TV18, Viacom18 and Amazon, among others. The rights will be available for 5 years or seasons from 2023 to 2027. The detailed terms and conditions governing the tender process, including eligibility requirements, the process for submissions of bids, proposed media rights packages, obligations, etc., will be part of the tender document. However, the document will be made available only after receipt of payment of a non-refundable fee of Rs 25 lakh. The last date to purchase the tender document is May 10th. The auction will likely be in June. Announcing the release of the ITT, J. Shah, Secretary of BCCI, tweeted, "I am pleased to announce that @BCCI has issued the tender document for @IPL media rights for seasons 2023-27. With 2 new teams, more matches, more engagement, more venues, we are looking to take #TataIPL to newer and greater heights." BCCI has clarified that only those parties that satisfy the eligibility criteria set out in the ITT and are subject to the other terms and conditions will be eligible to bid. Also, it said that merely purchasing the ITT does not entitle any person to bid. As the BCCI released the document post-banking hours, most of the interested parties are likely to pay the invitation to tender fee on March 30th. Against the tide of big budget and ensemble star cast, Taapsee Pannu starrer Telugu film Mission Impossible is a content-rich comedy thriller. It releases in theatres on April 1st. Big ensemble star cast films like RRR and The Kashmir Files are earning big bucks at the box office. This hasn't daunted matinee entertainment to release a small but content-rich film, Mission Impossible. This Telugu comedy film stars Taapsee Pannu in the lead, while director Swaroop RSJ of Agent Sai Srinivasa Athreya fame is helming this bounty hunting movie. The film's trailer reveals Taapsee playing an investigative journalist who says that a corrupt politician is habituated to the cycle of arrest, influence and bail. When she and her team feel it's almost impossible to carry out a mission, they take the help of 3 kids who try to capture India's most wanted criminal Dawood Ibrahim to get rich in a short time. They feel nothing is impossible and Taapsee too is spellbound by their guts. How they accomplish a mission forms the crux of the story. Based on an incredible true event, Swaroop RSJ has commercialized the concept with his wonderful writing and taking. Taapsee wins brownie points with her performance, but the kids steal the show with their hilarious display. They are too good in their respective roles and bring freshness to the narrative. Niranjan Reddy and Anvesh Reddy are producing the film, while N.M. Pasha is the co-producer. Mission Impossible will release in theatres on April 1st. That's all for this bulletin of Daily India Report.
Thank you very much for that report. And as we know that PIO-TV, run by the Gupta family, and we'd like to wish the very best and very happy birthday to K.N. Gupta ji. 90 years old today. Wonderful, or 90 years young, I should say. Many wonderful memories that we have shared together on many of our international conferences, many Gopya functions in Delhi as well, and of course across the world. We have met on many, many occasions. So once again, wishing you all the very best and many happy returns of the day. Well, right now we will move on with the catch-up news before we go to the Parliament sitting. Well, there is some relief on the way for the residents of the floods.
There's a sense of relief really here amongst the community to see and hear that the floodwaters are slowly receding, but there's also the harsh reality of actually having to deal with what is left behind once you've had a flood again engulf your community, your CBD district. Many homes are also having to then deal with actually having flood mud again all around. So here, as you know, that the flood peaked last night at 11.4 metres. That's 80 centimetres above the levee height. And it will remain above the levee height for most of today, but those waters are starting to recede. Look, we spoke a short time ago to Jamie Haycock, a father of triplets who was back here visiting his rental property where he's been forced out of because it was terribly flooded last month, and was relieved to see that the waters hadn't got inside this time.
This time, it was just basically where you're seeing it. So last time, obviously, 2.5 metres through the house. And so, yeah, we were worried that the night before last it was quite stressful. Yeah, we'll say very grateful, relief, really.
So many in the community, really just a sense of relief here that it wasn't a worse situation with those rivers, although it's still a major flood and one of the highest recorded ever here in Lismore. There are still a number of people, though, who are under evacuation orders and as yet still unable to go to their homes. Nicole Hogan from the SES said that, yeah, they'll be providing further information as to when people can get back home later today.
A number of evacuation warnings in the communities in the Northern Rivers and in the Mid-North Coast areas, and we are trying to get people back into their communities as quickly as we can. So we will continue to work with the communities in those areas that are under evacuation order, and as soon as it's safe to do so, we'll lift those orders.
Nicole Hogan from the SCS. So, Rani Hayman, what's the situation on the mid-north coast of New South Wales?
Good morning, Michael. Well, the sun has come up and now we can see the Clarence River, which lines Grafton here on the mid-north coast. The Bureau of Meteorology has said that it was expected to peak at around the moderate to high flood levels. We've had a couple of residents who have gathered around here this morning and they're having a look at what's going on, but they're not too concerned. If you have a look behind me, you can see there that there's a light pole there, sort of just behind there is where the boats normally head off onto the water, and I've been told by one of the residents that there's actually a car that was left there and is now submerged underwater. Thankfully no one was inside. But here on the mid-north coast we have heard that the Bureau of Meteorology has updated the severe weather warning, so now it's just warning of damaging winds. So there is a number of towns that line the Clarence River here on the mid-north coast. One in particular, Elmara, was evacuated last night. People were asked to leave by 10 p.m. There is a road that leads on to the Pacific Highway, which is on the other side of this river, and that's been cut off to the north. So further south, there are a lot of...
So, ladies and gentlemen, right
Our
now,
Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Honourable members, I respectfully acknowledge that we are sitting today on the land of Aboriginal people and pay my respects to elders past and present. I thank them as First Australians for their careful custodianship of the land over countless generations. We are indeed fortunate in this country to have two of the world's oldest continuing living cultures, in Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples, whose lands, winds and waters we all now share. Are there any matters of privilege? I call the Treasurer.
Mr. Speaker. I rise in a matter of privilege. Yesterday the members for Mudgeeraba and Moggill made statements to the effect in the House that there were no funds allocated from the Hospital Building Fund in the last state budget. The members were present in the chamber when I delivered last year's budget speech on the 15th of June. During that speech, I said that the Hospital Building Fund would make initial investments in the Toowoomba Day Surgery, purchasing public health services through the expansion at Mater Public Hospital Springfield and an uplift in Queensland Health's base capital program. Both members also received a printed copy of Budget Paper 1, the budget speech on that day. The members for Mudgeeraba and Moggill have deliberately misled the House, and I will write to you further on this matter.
Order. Thank you, members. Honourable members, I received advice from the member for Thuringowa, Aaron Harper MP, as to his absence from sittings of the House this week. The member's notification complies with Standing Order 263A. I've also received correspondence from the member for Traeger advising of his resignation as a member of the Mental Health Select Committee, and I tabled the letter for the information of members. Honourable members, the invasion of Ukraine by Russia is a shock to the peace and stability of democracies worldwide. The Queensland community is united in condemning this brutal invasion. In a symbolic show of solidarity with Ukraine, tonight Parliament House will be lit blue and yellow. The Deputy Speaker will be hosting a members' drop-in session for the Ukrainian community of Queensland on level 7 of the Green Deck between 12 and 2. The UCQ has been raising funds for medical aid to be sent to Ukraine and to assist Ukrainian refugees coming to Australia. I strongly urge members to pop in and support our local Ukrainian community. I thank the Deputy Speaker for his organisation of this event. Here in Australia, we take our peace and democracy for granted. The invasion of Ukraine takes these precious gifts away from the Ukrainian people. It is intolerable, there as it would be here. I stand with Ukraine. Honourable members, it's no sad duty to advise that Mr Stephen Finnemore, Committee Secretary, has officially lodged his retirement after 23 years of parliamentary service, distinguished service over this time. Stephen commenced employment with the Parliamentary Service on the 23rd of April 1999. He has worked in the committee office for various committees over the years, including the predecessors of the Parliamentary Crime and Corruption Committee, and is currently responsible for the Technical Scrutiny Secretariat. Stephen is, after the clerk, the second longest serving clerk at the table, serving at the table of the House since 2001. Many current members would not realise that in 2008 Stephen cycled from Brisbane to Cairns to raise funds for the Royal Flying Doctor Service and to promote and attend the regional sitting of Parliament in Cairns in that same year in October. Yes. Stephen is a mammal. In 2010, Stephen was Committee Secretary of the Select Committee for the Review of the Parliamentary Committee System Committee, which designed the current portfolio system we have today. More recently, Stephen was co-opted to assist the Coal Workers Pneumoconiosis Select Committee on its inquiry into black lung, to the Health Committee on its inquiry into aged care, end-of-life and palliative care, and voluntary assisted dying, and to the Parliamentary Crime and Corruption Committee on its inquiry into the Logan Council matter. The clerk informs me, and I quote, "Stephen is retiring in April so he can do some soft bike ride in the winter months." I'm reliably informed the official title of the ride is Golf to Golf, the Bike and Wheels Expedition, a ride from Port Augusta in South Australia to Corumba in the Queensland Gulf Country. I must say that for members who aren't aware, we do important training for our temporary speakers to ensure that they can be robust enough to stand up to the rest of you. Stephen always took great delight in playing his character roles. Let's just say he had his swan song on Tuesday, and he enjoys the theatrics and pantomime far too much. Honourable members, I'm sure you'll join with me in wishing Stephen all the very best in his retirement. I wish to advise that we will be visited in the gallery this morning by
And the Speaker, they have the, paying recognition to the former Speaker of the House, and it's wonderful to see that. And of course, looking at all the politicians, having spent a big night on the green, raising funds for the flood victims, and right now sitting in the Parliament once again. So it's not easy, as we know.
The member has lodged an e-petition, which is now closed and presented. Mr Perrott, from 6,134 petitioners, requesting the House to abolish the mandates which are impacting agricultural shows in Queensland. The following lodged e-petition, sponsored by the clerk, is now closed and presented. 2,847 petitioners requesting the House to block the imminent logging of Beerwah State Forest Lot AP 22457.
Notifications and tablings. I call the clerk.
I inform the House of the tabling of certain papers in accordance with the notification and tabling of papers document emailed to members.
Are there any ministerial papers? Are there any ministerial notices of motion? Are there any ministerial statements? I call the Honourable the Premier.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. We know how important the internet has become in our modern society. From our workplaces to our homes, it is essential as electricity as is to our modern day functioning. It's also critical in our schools and for our children's education and futures. Mr Speaker, this morning I can announce a high-speed game changer for our Queensland schools and the communities that surround them. Our government is investing nearly $190 million to dramatically increase internet speeds at all Queensland state schools. This important partnership will also see Telstra spend $110 million on exchange upgrades benefiting communities and businesses in hundreds of regional and remote areas. Mr Speaker, this investment will mean internet speeds across every single one of our 1,258 state schools will be 200 times faster. This will ensure teachers and students have access to the latest digital technologies and tools for their classrooms, everything they need for a world-class education. The first phase will...
Order. Member for Moggill, member for Capalaba. Premier, you have the call.
The first phase will increase average internet speeds 40... The first phase will increase...
Member for Burleigh, you're warned. Understanding orders.
Average internet speeds...
As you can see that there are interjections and the Speaker has to take control.
Connected to fibre optic for the first time, and students from the most remote parts of Queensland will have access to quality high-speed connectivity, Mr Speaker. The upgrade to more than 350 exchanges will also mean better, faster internet for entire communities, not just for schools in these locations. It will help everything from online businesses to agricultural management to telehealth services. Our government is committed to providing world-class education for our students and empowering our communities, and this investment is just one of the ways we're achieving this. Mr Speaker, last Tuesday I was in Proserpine with the Assistant Minister for Veterans Affairs at the unveiling of the new cenotaph. It is dedicated to the Proserpine locals who gave their lives serving our country. It was relocated and rebuilt so future generations can continue to pay tribute. Our government contributed more than $21,000 through the Queensland Veterans Memorial Grants program. Today, with less than a month to Anzac Day, I'm pleased to announce that $1.5 million is available in the next round of two other grants programs supporting veterans and their families. The 2022 Anzac Day Trust Grants program and the second round of the Anzac Day Trust COVID-19 Grants program. Anzac Day Trust grants are for organisations which help ex-servicemen and women and their dependents with welfare visits and functions, educational bursaries or other services. Meanwhile, the COVID-19 Grants program is to help veterans affected by the pandemic and for COVID-safe events. Last year, 186 organisations shared $1.4 million from the Trust Grants program, and COVID-19 grants totalling more than $600,000 went to 68 organisations. The 2022 applications are now open, closing on the 15th of May, and they'll be announced in November. Mr Speaker, I can also reveal today that more than $1.5 million has been awarded from the first round of another program, Queensland Remembers. The 25 programs include things such as upgrade to the Camp Gregory Veterans Retreat at Woodgate, upgrades to the Roma Cenotaph, telling war widow stories through the Legacy Club of Brisbane, a new war memorial at Mergen, restoring the Atherton War Memorial, a Veterans Wellbeing Hub at Beaudesert, a Veterans Housing Project at Longreach. Mr Speaker, I congratulate Assistant Minister Bart Mellish for his hard work and dedication in delivering all of these grants programs. We are proud to continue supporting our veterans, their families and the organisations that assist them. Mr Speaker, every March we celebrate the achievements of Queensland's women and girls and continue to raise awareness of and strive for greater gender equality. I'm proud to lead a government that sets the right example. As I always say, you cannot be what you cannot see. We were the first government in Australia to have 50% women in our cabinet. We now have 8 women in cabinet. We also have a female governor, a female police commissioner and another female Chief Justice. Last year we appointed Queensland's first Special Commissioner for Equity and Diversity, Dr Linda Colley, to drive further improvements in the public sector, and I had a very good meeting with her this week along with the Minister for Industrial Relations. We smashed our target to get 50% of women on boards. It's now at 54%. We're encouraging women into traditionally male-dominated professions, investing in women's health initiatives and making sure there are more female facilities in sport change rooms. We're continuing to fight domestic and family violence and invest $600 million towards services, programs and strategies targeting this issue. And we're committed to tackling coercive control as part of a wide-ranging review into the experiences of women across the criminal justice system. And all of this is driven by our women's strategy, which we released back in 2016. It's now 5 years old and there's been so much passion and momentum for changes since to make the world fairer and safer for women. The nation has a renewed focus on the issue, and in Queensland we do too. That's why today, along with the Minister for Women, we're releasing a new Queensland Women's Strategy developed following extensive consultation with women and girls across the state, and I table that report. It takes action on economic inequality with a focus on fairness and inclusion. It will empower communities to end gendered violence and further strengthen women's health and safety. It will elevate the role of First Nations women in decision-making and amplify the voices of women from underrepresented and marginalised backgrounds. And it will provide the foundations to celebrate more extraordinary Queensland women. Mr Speaker, a lot of barriers to women's equality, particularly economic, are a federal responsibility. That's why I called for a National Women's Summit last year and for it to be put on the National Cabinet agenda. Mr Speaker, we must all work together, government, businesses and communities, to make sure it's a fairer society for all. Mr Speaker, every March we also acknowledge women suffering from and to raise awareness of endometriosis. It's estimated to affect 200 million women worldwide and at least 1 in 9 women in Australia. Members will know that I have long been an advocate for bringing awareness to endometriosis and its debilitating symptoms, and I thank others in this House who also bring attention to this important issue. I know that often women with endometriosis suffer in silence, and in the past there was no one to turn to and no one to talk to, and today it is out in the public being talked about and there is support out there. Our government is committed to greater awareness and education and to ensuring that Queensland endo warriors have access to support. Our commitment of nearly $500,000 over 4 years means they can deliver a range of programs and services in schools through mentoring and workplace sessions. Mr Speaker, we've come a long way in bringing attention to endometriosis and to improving the care and services available to women, but there is still more to be done. Our government remains committed to being a proud supporter of this mission. Finally, Mr Speaker, last night the Parliament came together with our community to raise money for the Queensland Floods appeal. I would like to thank our generous donors and sponsors for the food, the drink, raffles and auction items, with all proceeds going to this worthy cause. Thank you to you, Mr Speaker, and to the Opposition Leader for co-hosting this event. One of the most beautiful moments came from the Western Queensland Alliance of Councils. This represents 22 local government areas from the state's far north to our western border. As Mayor Andrew Martin said, many's the time the people of their region have been heartened by the generosity of those in the southeast in times of drought and floods. They felt it was only fitting to return the favour in our hour of need. They sent trucks and earth-moving equipment from their councils to help ours with the clean-up. And last night they gave $105,500 to the flood appeal. Mr Speaker, this demonstrates once again something I've often said. No matter where we live in Queensland, we are in everything together. And, combined with their generosity, last night's function raised a total of $246,000. And I think, Mr Speaker, we can understand that Mr Spencer Jolly off today. It will be provided between Red Cross Queensland, Lifeline the Salvos, Give It and St Vincent de Paul. They will distribute it to Queenslanders in need. And finally, can I once again pay tribute to the parliamentary staff? They did an outstanding job. Our primary producers who donated the food, and make special mention, of course, of everyone who has been involved in this wonderful event.
Can I back those comments, Premier? It was a wonderful event, and particularly the Western Alliance of Councils, one of the most benevolent acts I've seen in a long time. I call the Deputy Premier.
Mr Speaker, the Palaszczuk government is unlocking more opportunities for... We are positioning Queensland as a renewable energy global superpower. Our renewable energy and net zero emissions targets are creating opportunities for more jobs in more industries right along the renewable energy supply chain. We've been bringing together key players so we can leverage our state's traditional strengths and thrive in the global transformations ahead, starting in central Queensland. On Tuesday, Stanwell Corporation joined Rio Tinto Australia, Alpha HPA, Orica and Acciona as the fifth company to sign the Central Queensland Statement of Cooperation. The Statement of Cooperation outlines our commitment to making Central Queensland a renewable energy powerhouse. It will secure the future competitiveness of Queensland, adding value to a natural energy advantage to drive employment and economic outcomes for the state. Having Stanwell join the Statement of Cooperation makes sense and is a good step forward for Central Queensland's growing renewables and hydrogen industry. With their major Japanese and domestic partners, the company is progressing their feasibility study for a large-scale green hydrogen project to supply both domestic and export customers. With Japan's largest hydrogen supplier, Iwatani, Stanwell is progressing work towards the development of a large-scale renewable hydrogen project in central Queensland. The project aims to export renewable hydrogen to Japan as well as supply large-scale industrial customers in the central Queensland region to support emissions reduction for domestic industry. Through this project, Queensland's very own energy generators and ports could play a key role in meeting global hydrogen demand as well as supply local industry. There is also their landmark Memorandum of Understanding with Acciona that could see Queensland's largest solar project providing clean and renewable energy to one of Queensland's largest renewable hydrogen projects. The partnerships we've formed through the Statement of Cooperation are highlighting on a global stage the benefits of investing in Queensland. The Palaszczuk government is putting Queensland at the forefront of an emerging industry, an industry that could contribute billions to our economy. And yet the federal government has failed to deliver a cent for renewables or hydrogen in Queensland in their budget. The Morrison government's budget lacks any dedicated plan or commitment. The Morrison government's budget lacks any dedicated plan or commitment to growing the industries and jobs that will accompany energy transition. The budget does not speak to any clear or strategic plan to grow renewables in Queensland or elsewhere in Australia. What little they've invested has been given to Liberal governments in New South Wales, Tasmania and the former Marshall government in South Australia. Once again, there is nothing for Queensland. The LNP's federal budget failed to deliver Queensland our fair share of funding, including for renewables.
I call the Treasurer.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Mr Speaker, the next time this House sits, we will be in the final days of a federal election campaign, or the federal election may very well have been held. And there is a lot at stake for Queensland on the outcome of this contest. In 2019, Queensland handed Scott Morrison a great victory. The LNP won more than 3 out of every 4 House of Representatives seats in Queensland. Queenslanders put their trust in Scott Morrison. And nearly 3 years on, that trust has been betrayed. At every opportunity, Scott Morrison At every opportunity, Speaker, Scott Morrison has chosen words over actions. He has chosen announcement over delivery. And he has chosen anyone else over Queensland. Tuesday night's budget was just the latest and perhaps greatest demonstration of the disdain Scott Morrison shows for a state that he takes for granted. In the budget for his own state of New South Wales, where he desperately needs to win seats, Scott Morrison has allocated $1.3 billion for infrastructure investment over the next 4 years. In the same period, Queensland gets just $446 million. Speaker, we have 2/3 of the population of New South Wales, but we get 1/3 of the new infrastructure investment. Even in the so-called signature projects in Queensland are all signature and no project. The $1 billion of new money for Australian water projects across the forward estimates has to cover Scott Morrison's $600 million commitment to Paradise Dam. That leaves just $400 million for everything else in Australia, including the $5.4 billion Hells Gate Dam. Scott Morrison's plan for Hells Gate is as real as the Queensland LNP's fake Bradfield scheme and the infamous Bruce Highway hoax.
Order! Member for Denango.
Speaker, like Scott Morrison's park and ride pork barrel rort in 2019, they're not even
Member for Theodore.
That it's a real commitment. It's just a set of words with nothing to back it up. But something's changed from 2019, Speaker. Scott Morrison has squandered the benefit of the doubt that Queenslanders gave to him. Just like Senator
Leader of the Opposition,
Wells, who described him as a ruthless autocrat and bullying, with no moral compass and no conscience, who was not fit to be Prime Minister. Queenslanders have figured him out, and they don't like what they see, including what they saw in Tuesday night's budget, where Queensland once again failed to get...
Member for Denango has warned under standing orders.
Including last night's budget, or should I say Tuesday night's budget, proved Scott Morrison is out of touch with Queenslanders. It was a budget for the next 6 weeks and not for the next 4 years. A budget designed and built around Scott Morrison's future and not the future of Queensland. And Speaker, Queenslanders will not forget.
I call the
They're rowdy today.
Deputy Leader of the Opposition. You're warned under standing orders. I call the Minister for Education.
Speaker.
So the Minister of Education is now being called, and as you can see, the Minister Grace, she was with us last night as well, and wonderful, very, very, very hard worker.
Businesses around them. It will enable teachers and students right across Queensland to have access to the latest tools and technologies needed to deliver a truly 21st century education. My department has worked on the tender process for nearly 12 months to get the best deal for schools and students. I'd like to welcome to the gallery representatives from Telstra joining us today, Gavin Nichols and Jason Mills. Thank you very much for your efforts. This investment from the Palaszczuk government will dramatically increase internet speeds at all 1,258 Queensland state schools. We don't forget the National Party. Speaker, when I say dramatic, I'm not exaggerating. The work is starting already. Upgrades will roll out from the start of next term, and hundreds of schools will see the benefit this year. Speeds will be 40 times faster at all schools by the end of 2023 and up to 200 times faster in 2026. Our remote, isolated schools and students will not be left behind, National Party. Newer technologies like next-generation satellites will be used to deliver faster internet where terrestrial options are less practical. Speaker, this is an absolutely incredible announcement for our schools and students and for the delivery of education throughout Queensland. Classrooms will have access to the very latest technology and students will have no limits placed on their learning. This partnership will see Telstra invest $110 million to upgrade hundreds of exchanges across our great state. Around 350 upgrades have been identified already and more will be added as work progresses. This will mean access to better,
faster internet in those areas for schools and students, as well as access for businesses and communities around them. What a real deal that is. Compare that to the NBN is what I want to say. Both healthcare that have previously been out of reach due to bandwidth limitations, including telehealth and the provision of real-time diagnostics. We have future-proofed this partnership too. As new technologies emerge that can provide an even better service, we can incorporate these into the contract. Speaker, this announcement is a game-changer for the delivery of 21st century education for schools and students, with great additional benefits to the community at large, the National Party. The Palaszczuk government continues to deliver for the National Party and regional and remote communities, because our schools and students, even in the National Party seats, deserve nothing less.
I call the Minister for Health.
Thank you, Mr Speaker.
For Health, Honourable Yvette Dudd, who was there last night as well, speaking now.
Has risen from 271 to 365, with today's numbers being 339, including 24 children and 15 people in ICU. And the number of furloughed staff has risen from 1,596 people on the 20th of March, our health workers, to 3,232 as at yesterday. I know many in this chamber and people across Queensland are either experiencing COVID in their own households or know friends, families and work colleagues confronting this virus. This wave is now putting additional pressure back on our hospital system. Mr Speaker, it was 2 days ago that the Morrison government had the opportunity to not only recognise the pressure COVID is having on our hospital and health systems across the country, but also the need for real reform on funding for public hospitals, as well as the primary health care sector into the future. They failed the people of Queensland. Instead of fronting up with much-needed funding reform, they enacted senseless cuts to our hospitals. But, Mr Speaker, not only have the Coalition walked away from health reform, they are also walking away from the vital COVID National Partnership Agreement. This agreement was provided much-needed funding to our health system as we have battled the Delta and Omicron variants. It ensures that we have a proper 50-50 funding for COVID-related hospital and public health activity. In the absence of the actual 50-50 funding, retaining a 50-50 split for COVID activity is a must. Our most recent figures show that we are not done with COVID yet. We know that it will continue to add additional pressure to our already stretched hospital system, which is why it is so disheartening to see the significant cut from the Morrison government on this funding source. Whereas $526.8 million was allocated by the Coalition government for the COVID-19 National Partnership Agreement for 2021-22, that funding has been cut down to $105.8 million for 2022-23, with the federal government projecting that the funding agreement will end on 30 September this year, and after that, nothing. Back to the undercooked funding model that has been condemned by every state and territory, as well as preeminent stakeholders like the AMA. Mr Speaker, living with COVID doesn't mean pretending COVID doesn't exist.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, it's time to leave that report there, and that is Honourable Yvette Dudd, a member for Redcliffe, and also the Minister for the Health and Ambulance Services speaking there. And of course, as I mentioned before, that she also was there last night and did a wonderful job, and everyone meeting. And of course, Honourable Mark Bailey, who is speaking now, was there last night as well with us, and he spent a fair bit of time with us as well. And of course, the Speaker of the House, as you can see, and he mentioned about his tie, and of course the Leader of Opposition speaking. So there are a little bit more, few of the glimpses from there we will bring to you. And of course the Premier, they're addressing everyone last night as well. And the check that was presented by the Western Alliance of Councils, wonderful job that they did, $105,000 that they presented. Minister Hinchcliffe is there as well. So, ladies and gentlemen, with Honourable Mark Bailey speaking there right now, and it's time that we take leave from this segment. Let's hear from Mark Bailey.
Through the smoke and mirrors, and if they aren't going to deliver for the Bruce Highway, you'd think they'd chip in for the second Bruce Highway, the inland freight route. At the last federal budget, we heard that $400 million would be committed to the inland freight route, but hidden in the detail was the fact that only $75 million was in the forward estimates. Fast forward to this year's federal budget,
Member for Gregory.
An additional $400 million would be committed to the project. But lo and behold, when you look at the detail and the budget breakdown come through, we see that $233 million of their previous commitments still not released for another 4 years.
So, ladies and gentlemen, as I mentioned before, that it's been wonderful to having your company, and we're getting some good feedback on the restream of the Parliament sittings. Of course, we, a little bit further down the track, they will be going into the question time, which is quite lively when members get to ask other members questions, and the members are given 3 minutes to respond, and the Speaker of the House has a wonderful time trying to control those because there are interjections and other things. So once again, after a big night and all the members report to duty, it's not easy. And getting everything ready, all your ministerial statements ready to come and present and be of a clear mind to answer any questions that may be raised. So, ladies and gentlemen, this has been a restream by Australian Indian Radio of the Queensland Parliament sitting of the 31st day of March 2022. It's been wonderful having your company. Until tomorrow, it's goodbye from us.